This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. They're all gonna laugh at you. It's Carrie, and this film is lit. Hello, and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. It is our Halloween episode. Wanted to do this at the front here and mention we're going to be on a little bit of hiatus here for a week or two. We're actually finally going on our honeymoon a year after we were married. You know, it lines up with our anniversary.
Delayed honeymoon.
Our first anniversary, so it works out. But yes, we're going to be gone for a couple weeks. We will be returning at the beginning of November, towards the beginning of November. We will have an episode out, so as you're listening to this Carrie episode, if you're listening when it comes out, we will have an episode out next week on Wednesday. That will be, many of you have probably already listened to it or watched it. It will be our live episode from Cape Con this year that we recorded. But if you hadn't had a chance to check that out yet, we go down and we break down and discuss our top 5 best and worst adaptations of all time that we've done so far and kind of talk a little bit about each one. So that'll be episode, if you're interested in that, that'll be out next week, October 25th, I think is the date, something like that. And then the week after that, there will be no episode because we will still be returning from our trip. But then the following week after that, November 6th or something like that.
I think the 5th.
5th, something like that, yeah. That first week of November, full week of November, we will be back with our prequel episode where we will hear your thoughts on Carrie. So if you have feelings on Carrie, it'll be a little bit before we get to that, but we will get to it. Don't worry. So that's what's going on with us. We just wanted to mention that. Katie, let's get into it. If you have not read or watched Carrie, we're going to give you a brief summary of the film in Let Me Sum Up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
So we landed on this. We think it works well. Instead of doing both the book and the movie, if they're different or whatever, we're just going to do the movie from now on because that gives you a little bit of an overview. But then we don't go on and it just doesn't spoil anything. We think it works. So that's the plan moving forward. If you don't like that, let us know. So here is the movie summary from Wikipedia. Feel free to skip ahead a few minutes if you don't need this. Shy 16-year-old Carrie White, who lives with her fanatically religious and unstable mother Margaret, is a loner and bullied by her peers. When Carrie experiences her first period in school, she panics, having never been told about menstruation. Carrie's classmates laugh, throwing tampons and sanitary pads at her until the gym teacher, Miss Collins, intervenes. Margaret tells Carrie that her menstruation was caused by sin and locks Carrie in their prayer closet to pray for forgiveness. At school, Miss Collins reprimands Carrie's tormentors, punishing them with exercise detention, threatening to stop them from going to prom if they refuse. Carrie's longtime bully, kind of the ringleader of the bullies, Chris, who goes by Chris, Hargensen, eventually refuses and gets kicked out of the prom, or gets banned from going to prom. Plotting vengeance against Carrie, Chris and her boyfriend Billy Nolan break into a farm and kill a pig to drain its blood into a bucket, which they place above the school stage in the gym. Meanwhile, Sue Snell, a remorseful classmate, asks her handsome and popular boyfriend Tommy Ross to invite Carrie to prom. Carrie believes initially that this proposition is a prank, but he insists that it is genuine, and Carrie then goes on to discover that she has telekinesis. Despite Margaret's protests, she prepares for prom. Margaret sees Carrie's telekinetic powers and denounces her as a witch. During prom, Chris and Billy hide under the stage while the other conspirators switch the ballots to ensure that Carrie wins the prom queen title. As Carrie stands on stage with Tommy, finally beginning to feel accepted by her peers, Sue realizes Chris and Billy's plan and tries to intervene. Miss Collins spots Sue and, thinking that she is up to no good, throws her out of the prom. Chris and Billy douse Carrie in the pig's blood before sneaking out of the school. The empty bucket hits Tommy in the head and he faints. maybe. We'll see. The crowd is left shocked, speechless, and sympathetic to the prank, but Carrie hallucinates that everyone is mocking her, believing it was their plan all along. She telekinetically seals the exits of the gym and injures the students attempting to escape. Miss Collins is crushed by a falling basketball backward, and the principal and some other teachers are electrocuted. And then Carrie sets the entire gym on fire. As she exits the gym and seals the door behind her, she traps the staff and classmates in the school. As Carrie walks home, Chris attempts to run her over, but Carrie dodges the car and causes it to explode, killing both Chris and Billy. After Carrie arrives home, she bathes herself, and Margaret reveals that Carrie was conceived when her drunk husband Ralph raped her, an act that Margaret shamefully admits she enjoyed. She stabs Carrie in the back with a kitchen knife. Carrie sends knives flying toward Margaret, killing her. Then she destroys the house and perishes. Sometime later, Sue, the only survivor of the prom, has a nightmare in which she goes to lay flowers on the charred remains of Carrie's home. Upon the remains stand a for sale sign that has been vandalized with the words, "Carrie White burns in hell." Suddenly, Carrie's bloody arm reaches from beneath the rubble and grabs Sue. Sue wakes up screaming as her mother tries to comfort her. The end. So that is a brief summary of Carrie, the film. Let's get into it. I have quite a few questions to talk about in Was That in the Book?
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
What?
Honestly, don't you two read?
So as the summary mentioned, the inciting incident here in the film and where the film opens essentially is in the gym locker room at school, and Carrie is showering, and then she ends up having her first period, and she freaks out completely and like starts asking the other girls for help because she's bleeding and she does not understand why. And I wanted to know if that is what happens in the book.
Yes, that is the inciting incident in the book as
Okay,
well.
so identical there.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. So she starts freaking out, and all the students start bullying her. But then we get our first instance here in this moment of kind of an inkling of that Carrie may have some sort of special abilities or something like that. Is that while she's freaking out at one point, she causes like a light to explode or a light explodes, shall we say, in the locker room. And then later she goes to the principal's office and is talking to the principal, and he keeps saying her name wrong and calling her Cassie. And this makes her angry, and eventually like an ashtray that's sitting on his desk like goes flying through the air. And so we're getting all these hints that there's something going on. I wanted to know if the book similarly kind of set up, these little instances of strange things happening around Carrie to get to kind of establish the fact that, she has telekinetic powers.
So these two incidents are from the book, and I would say that there's actually even more of this element in the book because we get a lot of Carrie's backstory and childhood in the book.
Oh, okay. So yeah, a lot more build up before we get to the kind of the events of, or maybe not build up, but like either whether flashback or whatever, we get more background information. Is what you're saying. Okay, cool. So then we're introduced to Margaret, who is Carrie's mom, and I don't know if this is the first time we see her. I don't believe it is, but we do see her in one of these scenes. She's going around town to the other people in the town, and she's knocking on doors, requesting, I believe it's donations for like some organization she has formed that is like, it sounds fairly vague. I don't think it's for a specific church. I think it's for like,
I wasn't sure.
I'm pretty sure it's for like some specific like Mothers Against Sin or something.
Oh, yeah,
it's something like
right.
that.
Yeah.
It's like some organization she's doing that is like fighting against sin or whatever. And so she's connecting these donations, but she meets Mrs. Snell, who is Sue's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're introduced to Sue's mom as well. And there's this great line, and I wanted to know if it came from the book, because Mrs. Snell is not particularly interested in this, but Margaret says to her, "These are godless times, Mrs. Snell." And Mrs. Snell is holding, it looks like water, but she's holding a drink, and she says, "I'll drink to that." And it's a very funny interaction, and I wanted to know if that came from the book.
That is not from the book. I did like that exchange. I thought it was funny, although I had mixed feelings about having Mrs. White going door to door, like overall. In the book, she's totally isolated herself because everyone else is just so sinful.
Right.
Like, she goes to work, but other than that, she doesn't interact with people.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe the movie was going to approach her character with like a little more nuance
Not at
based on
all.
that scene.
No.
But yeah, aside from that one scene, it's pretty spot on. So that kind of felt like out of place to me.
I thought it worked. It felt in line with her character in the movie to me, at least. Like she's a recluse for the most part, but like she still feels strongly about the degeneracy she sees around her, so she's willing to go, knock doors and try to spread the good word or whatever. It felt at least it didn't feel wildly out of character to me. At least again from the movie's version of Margaret. But speaking of Margaret, I assume this is similar based on what you've just said. This is similar, but I want to know more specifically. In the film, she is not only a religious fanatic who's deeply, deeply, deeply in to her faith. She also is just like straight up abusive to Carrie, and I wanted to know if that was kind of the dynamic where Carrie's mom in the book is both deeply religious and uses that as sort of, or maybe not uses it, but is both abusive and deeply religious, and those things are kind of commingled in a very toxic amalgamation.
Yeah, all of that is spot on to the book. That is her main, and some might say only, personality trait.
Yeah. It's funny, we mentioned in the prequel that the actress who played, who actually just passed away like yesterday. I don't know if you saw that. Piper Laurie.
I think I did see something about that, yeah.
I think Kelly may have tweeted it or something. But yes, the actress who plays Piper Laurie, the actress who plays Margaret, literally passed away like yesterday as we were recording this. But she, in the prequel, we mentioned that she thought that the movie was like a dark comedy, and that specifically because of her role, she thought it was so ridiculous that like it could not be played straight.
It is over the top.
It is over the top. I think it does work.
Yeah.
Seriously, like as a horror film and as like a deeply upsetting and unsettling relationship, it doesn't feel so over the top as to be unrealistic to me. Like I totally jives with me that people like that would exist in the world.
Oh, people like that absolutely exist in the world.
You don't meet them a lot, but I have met those people occasionally, and yeah, they're out there for sure. But yeah, okay. So then we move on, and we like I said, we had the thing at the beginning where she has her period, and all the girls are like kind of torturing her while she's freaking out. So then the gym teacher now wants to rectify this. She's going to punish all the girls who are involved in kind of tormenting her during this episode. And I just couldn't get over how horrible the gym teacher is as a teacher, in my opinion, in the movie. Yeah. She literally just hits several kids like in the face. Like, and I know, it's the 70s. It's a little different time, but even then, I don't think they were cool with you smacking kids in the head. Like,
I don't know.
I feel pretty confident in saying. Now, to be fair with Carrie, she's doing the classic movie, like,
snap
get it
out
together.
Of it. Yeah.
Which, whatever. But she literally just hits Chris in the face on the field.
I mean, some might say Chris deserved it.
Look, I'm not even saying she didn't, but she's also a teacher, and this is a student. I don't care if the kid maybe deserved it. You don't hit a student. It's not how that works. Like, obviously, yes, the kids were shits, but she's so, like, I thought she was kind of awful in this movie. She also, like, revels in their punishment, and she gets better as the movie goes on, and I thought her characterization kind of becomes a little better. Like she feels less weird to me as the movie goes on and more like a normal person. But at the beginning, I was so taken aback by how just awful I thought she was. Like, again, she seems to be reveling in like kind of, punishing these students in a way that I found, not ideal. And I wanted to know if that was the character, or if that aspect of this character, well, one, I guess if this character is in the book, and two, if that aspect of the character came from the book.
She is in the book. Her name is different. Her name is Miss Desjardins in the book. And I think you said Miss Collins.
Yes, it's Miss Collins in the film.
In the movie. Yeah. And your question here, your kind of perspective, I thought was interesting. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I thought it was interesting because reading the book, and I mostly listened to the audiobook, but I didn't really perceive her as horrible in the book, even though she handles things very similarly to the way that she does in the movie. But in the book, we spend a little bit of time in her perspective.
Yeah.
And we get like her frustration with being a young first year teacher and like not knowing how to handle things and feeling like she's making mistakes.
Mm.
And like she particularly like really feels like she handled the incident in the locker room really badly.
Okay.
And then I think like overcompensates for it,
Okay.
trying to like rectify that situation. I guess I just had more empathy for her in the book because we do spend like a little bit of time with her.
Well, that would have helped a lot, knowing that
Yeah.
she felt like she handled things poorly and is trying, like that would have helped made me more sympathetic to her. And like I said, she does get better as the movie goes on. But that is one of the main things that really stuck out to me, and that was the note I had, is like, holy cow, she handled the situation in the locker room just awfully all around. Now, it's a tough situation. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to handle, but her first thing, she grabs Sue, who's just standing there and is like shaking and screaming at her, and I'm like, why did you? I just confused it. What it was like, why are you doing that? And then she goes over and it's like, yes, trying to comfort Carrie for a moment, but then she like hits her, and I'm like, what is? You're just like, again, I know it's a tough situation, but holy cow, I don't know if you could have handled that worse. I'm not sure, but again, in the movie, I don't think there's any indication that she's like a first year teacher or anything like that. And again, we don't get anything from her perspective of kind of her struggling and realizing she's having a hard time or anything like that. It just seems, at least initially in the film, like this is just who she is, and is like
that's fair. Yeah.
And so she came across, I don't know, I found her much less sympathetic in the film than maybe your book portrayal did. But again, she got better as the film went, and I liked her more, and she felt more like a person just doing their best. Whereas initially I was like, oh my God.
No, and I think that does bring up like an interesting, kind of element of this show where I'm like bringing additional context to a character that you don't have. So we really perceive that character differently.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of a good example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we move on, and Sue, who I mentioned earlier, is the one girl who was not particularly, or the main girl who was not particularly interested in tormenting Carrie and feels bad about everything that has happened. And so as a result of this, she decides to ask her boyfriend, Tommy, to ask Carrie to prom, basically to be nice. Like, hey, can you ask Carrie to prom? Because she feels like a loner, an outsider, and then if you take her to prom, maybe she'll feel better about herself or whatever. Is kind of the idea. And I want to know if that happened in the book, because I thought it was really interesting, because I felt, again, so much of the, and this will be the thing that I come back to, and we'll talk. This movie's very interesting to me, and we have a lot more about this later. But this was like kind of a tale of two movies to me, where for like the first maybe roughly half or almost two-thirds,
maybe even more
maybe
than
like
half.
2/3 of the movie, I was like, this might suck.
Yeah.
Not that anything was particularly terrible, but there was lots of stuff that I was like, I don't like this. This is a weird choice. Not a big fan of this. This is horrible. Like I had lots of things that just kept like slowly stacking up of like, well, that scene didn't really work. I don't think this really worked. That worked really well. Like here and there would be moments. But then from Act 3 roughly to the end of the film, I thought was like brilliant. Again, we'll get to it. I thought it was like virtuosic filmmaking. And I'm like, how are these the same movie? Like, I don't understand. And we'll get into that more in a bit. But I did want to know if, but anyway, so one of the things I thought, the whole way that Tommy goes along with, he kind of like begrudgingly agrees to ask Carrie to prom, and then the teacher confronts them about it after she hears about it, and they have this really weird interaction with the teacher about it, where they're like, and everything about that dynamic felt very strange to me, and I want to know if it came. I assume it must have come from the book, because it sounds like overall this is a pretty faithful adaptation, to a lot of what's going on. But again, that whole dynamic felt strange, and I think part of it was that I was having a hard time getting initially a vibe on like Tommy and his motivations and stuff. And it was, anyways, does that happen in the book? Does Sue have Tommy ask Carrie to prom?
Yes, that is from the book. Although I think the conceit works a little better in the book. Again, because we spend some time with Sue and in her kind of guilt-ridden perspective, and we can understand like what she's trying to do here a little bit better, because she feels guilty about that incident in particular, but she also feels guilty about the fact that Carrie has kind of always been this scapegoat, and she's popular, but she's never really participated in the
Right,
bullying.
but she's also never, like, stuck up
Yeah,
for
she's
her
never
and-
done anything to
yeah.
try to stop it.
Yeah.
And she's reached a point of like maturity,
Uh-huh.
I guess, where
Yeah.
she's starting to feel really bad about that.
Yeah.
But she's also still a kid, so
Right.
her solution to
It's
this
terrible.
is
not
terrible.
Great.
Yeah,
it's not ideal.
you know,
Yeah.
it's a nice thought.
It's a nice thought, but it's
like,
like not a great idea
Yeah.
overall. Yeah.
and I was a little torn on having Tommy be hesitant like he is in the movie. He's not really in the book, which is supposed to show us that he truly loves Sue because he's willing to just do whatever she wants to make her happy. He's kind of like, this is weird, but if it's going to make you happy, I'll do it.
Right.
I think it makes perfect sense that he'd be hesitant.
Right. Yeah.
But it also feels a little odd. Like, I'm not sure what the movie wants me to get from him.
I didn't mind him being hesitant. I think it makes perfect sense for him to be like, well, I don't really want to do that. Like, that's kind of weird. Like, that made sense. It's the interaction with the teacher and then the reaction afterwards and his persistence to continue doing it after the teacher is like, don't do this. And they see, like, that whole interaction with the teacher felt so strange to me because they just like they're like not saying anything and they're being weird, and I get it's like some of it feels a little bit true to like how teenagers are, just kind of like being obstinate and not really engaging or whatever, but it also felt like this weird thing that they continue to do it after that, and especially Tommy, who was already hesitant, to then can still go through with it after the teacher's like kind of like don't do like this is not a good idea basically, and it's like confronts him about it. Felt, I don't know, it just kind of felt strange.
Having the teacher confronting them is actually not from the book.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of it. I think it makes sense because obviously, you know, this teacher gets wind of that plan. Obviously she's gonna think, oh, they're up to something.
Right.
I don't think that the script handled Tommy and Sue particularly well following that, though.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. It almost seemed like the movie wanted us to think that, like was trying to cast suspicion on them.
Yeah,
almost.
maybe. Yeah, that maybe they're involved somehow.
Yeah, in the whole plot.
Right. But it's clear they're not.
There's clear they're not, and they didn't cast suspicion on them in any other way. So I was left kind of like not knowing, and this is more what I was getting at with like Tommy's behavior and like the way that they had him act. Like I'm left like not sure what the movie wanted me to get from the whole thing.
I would agree. There's quite a few instances of this, and we'll get to some more later, where there, you know, when we talked about in the prequel, the person who wrote this, Lawrence Cohen, I believe, like is basically only done this, and I think there might be a reason, because I think the script kind of sucks, but is also good. Like it's this weird mixture of like works brilliantly because of some things, but is also like, I don't know. I have a really weird relationship to this movie after watching it for the first time. That it simultaneously feels like, again, a virtuosic masterpiece at times and a complete hack shit at other times. And then it's so strange. And a lot of that, though, it does come down to like kind of the moment to moment dialogue and the way the characters act feels really alien sometimes. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like humans. I don't even know. Other times it feels incredibly human and incredibly grounded, incredibly like real and raw and stuff. And then other times I feel like I'm like watching the worst local theater that I've ever seen. Like it's so strange. It's very interesting.
Well, and I wonder if, because one thing that I feel like Stephen King is pretty good at in his writing is bouncing around two different perspectives and giving us like exactly what we need in that person's perspective to contribute to the story overall. And I wonder if the person who adapted it just kind of struggled with getting that into the script in a way that felt like human and natural without having like a voiceover explaining their thoughts.
I guess it's so strange. Again, we'll get some more scenes later that I felt really didn't work, but it was a fascinating watch. I'll say that much. Okay, so moving on, they then, during this conversation with the teacher, I think this is when this scene takes place, she mentions that if Tommy goes to prom with Carrie, Sue can't go to prom because you have to have a date to go to prom. And I was like, wait, what?
I had the same question during this scene. This is not mentioned in the book.
I've never heard this in anything
I've never
before.
heard that ever. Sue does decide on her own not to go to prom in the book. I feel like we're going to have to throw this one to any listeners who were in high school at this time.
Yeah.
Because this is something that I could see being
potentially,
true,
yeah, like,
but also like I've never heard of that.
I've never heard that. The only thing I could think is, and it didn't it did not remotely come across this way in the movie, is that the only other possible explanation is that she's not saying that she's not allowed, but she's saying like, oh, you can't go to prom without a date, like you'll be ridiculed, or like she's implying like you don't want to go to prom without a date because like but that's not how it comes across at all in the scene. It seems like she's like saying
I would
she's
have
forbidden.
to rewatch the scene again, but right now, sitting right here, I would swear on my life that she says you won't be allowed to go.
Something along those lines.
A date.
Yeah, I agree. As like I said, the only thing I could think is that if we misinterpreted it slightly, but I don't think that's the case. And she's just saying like, you don't want to go to prom without a date, but like I'm pretty sure she says you can't go to prom without like literally you aren't allowed. I'm like, wait, that's no way that's a rule. I know I've never heard that before, but maybe it was in some places. Who knows? I don't know. Seems very strange, but okay. So then we're getting closer to prom, and now Chris, because she basically walked out on the. She got all of the girls who were in trouble. They got in like a week's worth of gym detention where they had to like do manual physical exercise for a week. And Chris was like, screw this, I'm not doing it. And so she's forbidden from going to prom. So in order to get revenge, her and her boyfriend Billy, played by John Travolta, a young John Travolta, who is, I think, terrible in this movie.
Who is awful in this movie? I'll say it.
I went and read some like IMDb reviews, and it blew. I read like a handful of stuff today just because I had to see if anybody shared my feelings on this movie, and some people did. It's actually I was more people who were like, a lot of this movie's weird than I was expecting, considering how like kind of universally praised it is. But a lot of people. Or most of the reviews are like 9-10 stars. This movie's perfect, brilliant, amazing, whatever. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, do you only remember the last act?
Yes,
it's got to be it. But I saw somebody specifically praising John Travolta's performance in this, and I thought he was awful,
bad.
And I don't even know if it's him or the script or the direction. You know what I mean?
It's got to be a little bit of both.
Because Travolta generally is pretty good and stuff. So
he's usually pretty
good. And so I don't know, but I thought he was awful in this. But anyway, so they're gonna get revenge. So they go to a pig farm to kill a pig to drain its blood so that they can set up this prank to dump blood on Carrie when she wins prom. And again, I can't mention enough how much all of Billy and Chris's dialogue has this weird uncanny valley-ness to it. Specifically these two.
Yes, these two are...
And this isn't the scene in the car. I have a note about that later. But this is the scene of them sneaking into the pig farm. I don't even remember what they're saying, but I'm like, this is not how people talk.
No, every single scene between these two was incomprehensible.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you even talking about? Like, you're saying words, but I cannot follow your conversation. What are you saying?
And I was like, is this intentional? Is it supposed to be like, oh, they're like the vapid popular kids, so they literally don't even say things that make sense? I don't think that's it, but it's truly mind-blowing how every scene these characters have together just seems like they're just saying nonsense, and I'm like, what is happening? And again, maybe that's intentional, but it doesn't feel like it is.
I don't know, because every time they had a scene together, I felt like I was listening to like Sims.
Yeah,
like babble at each other.
And it's particularly weird because Chris, and again, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm missing the brilliance of it. Maybe it is just like a brilliant kind of commentary, but like, because the scenes where Chris has with other people, she sounds like a normal person.
Yeah,
like kind of, and I don't know. Anyways. But I want to know if they sneak into a pig farm and kill a pig to drain its blood to dump on, which again, the pig was going to die anyway. So, but like, still weird, still an insane person thing to do. Yes. But like, yeah. But then I want to know if they do that, and then also, do they put it up in the rafters like days before the prom, and apparently nobody notices this? I was so confused about that, but. Again, not that matters that much in the grand scheme of things. Whatever, it's the conceit for the end. But
Right.
Does that all happen?
They do kill a pig to get the blood. In classic King style, it is described in much more detail in the book. So I was happy to skip most of that.
Yeah, we just kind of see him swing a sledgehammer.
Yeah, and then it like
off
goes
camera,
to black.
Basically, yeah.
I think that it's like the day before prom when they put the blood up in the rafters. They do put it like up in the like rafters above the auditorium stage in the book. I don't recall exactly, but it's like the day before or a couple days before. I think it was more hidden in the book, though, was kind of the vibe that I got. There was an incredibly extended description of like behind the stage and like the rafters and like the catwalk and all of that my eyes kind of glazed over during, but I got the impression that it was more hidden.
It wouldn't have been an issue to me except for that in the film, like I wouldn't have even thought twice about it, except for the fact that we see them put the bucket up in the rafters, and then like a scene or two later, we're watching all the students decorate the gymnasium for prom
on very tall ladders
in daylight, like
on terrifyingly tall ladders.
While it's light out, and I'm like, that scene should have been before.
I agree.
They should have.
And maybe that was just an editing.
I don't know, but it blew.
Oopsie.
Yeah, because I was like, why would you have them put the bucket up there before we see them decorating the entire gymnasium? Because somebody would see that bucket. Like
I agree.
Like it just makes it's so simple for them to just have put it up there the night before. Yeah. Everything's already decorated. It's ready to go. They sneak in there at the last minute, put it up there. Nobody looks after that. But we literally see the students decorating after they put the bucket up there. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Fine, sure. Get to the night of prom. Carrie is very excited to go to prom. She finally does agree to go with Tommy. He does a very classic not taking no for an problematic 70s not taking no for an answer.
Yes. But it's fine because he means well.
Yeah, he does mean well, so it's fine that he just barges through her 8 no's in a row and then finally gets a sure. So she's getting ready for prom. She's actually kind of excited and ready to go, and she's like she's dressed that she's made and everything. But her mom is like kind of telling her she doesn't want to go, or that she doesn't want her to go and that she can't go and all this sort of stuff. But Carrie at this point actually does kind of stand up for herself and is like, "No, look, I'm going." And I thought that was interesting. I liked that kind of, her finally sticking up for herself after getting to a point where she can stick up for herself to her mother and kind of defy her mom, who has been to this point in the film a traumatic force of nature who just kind of abuses her and does whatever she wants, and Carrie seems to have almost no agency.
Yeah, she does. That plays out pretty similarly to how it is in the book. Her mom tries to tell her she can't go, and she's like, I'm gonna go.
This is another peg in the board of what makes this the ending of this movie so effective, is because you can
like see her kind of coming into her own.
Yes, it's just one more in the tragedy of this film. It's one more thing. It's like, oh wow, look at her. She's actually standing up for herself. She's moving in the right direction. She's gonna be able to get out from under her mom's thumb, and then you know where this is all going.
Right.
So it's just one more thing, which I have a note about later. Is one more. I think it's my next note actually, almost. But it's one more thing in that ladder of just like building up the eventual fall. One more rung in the ladder to the eventual fall that we all know is coming at the end of this. But during this scene, maybe the most famous line from this movie. The only other thing I knew other than when Carrie gets blood dumped on her in prom, which is the only thing I knew from this movie, not even what happens before or after that. I didn't know nothing of the context of that. I just knew she gets blood dumped on her, and then I was like, maybe something happens bad. I don't know, but I've never even seen what happened after the blood dumping. I'd only seen up to the blood dumping, and that was the only part of it. So anyways. But I had heard this line, which is, "They're all gonna laugh at you," which is her mom telling everybody, or telling her that all the students are actually just gonna laugh at her, and it's all a ploy to make fun of her, and blah blah blah. And does that line, "They're all gonna laugh at you," come from the book?
I don't think this is in the book. I wasn't able to get a hold of an ebook copy of this. I am still like 16th down on the hold list for it through my library. So I could not do any line searches, but I think this is a movie edition.
Okay.
If you have an ebook copy, feel free to search that up and support me or correct me.
Yeah, for sure. So that brings us to the thing that I just mentioned, which is that I think the thing that works best about this movie, there's a few things that work really well. One, the whole climax is brilliant. Two, another thing we'll talk about in a minute. But this is the other thing that I think works really, really well, and what makes the movie so kind of emotionally effective is the awful anticipation of what is coming, because we all know this is going to end horribly. The dramatic irony in this film is just brutal. And if you don't know, dramatic irony just means the audience knows something that the character doesn't.
Yes.
And that can be a whole bunch of different things, but in this particular instance, we know that there's prank is set up to dump blood on Carrie, and she has no idea. I mean, obviously she has some suspicions that something might happen, but she's gotten to the point where she's willing to just go and kind of have a good time, and we know what is coming. And we keep hoping maybe it's not going to happen. But I wanted to know if the book had this similar dramatic irony, because I could see both ways. I could imagine a book where we don't know this is all being set up, and we find out after she gets all the blood dumped on her that this whole plot was in motion or whatever. That would surprise me, but I could see that. But the main question is, does the book have that same sort of dramatic irony of us seeing what is coming and dreading it, and is that the thing that kind of really makes all of this work in a horrible, depressing, awful way?
Yes, the book does. It is just as brutal. I would say the book plays with that more.
Oh, really?
Because the book has there's a lot of kind of non-linear storytelling, kind of, where we get little snippets of stuff from after the entire events of the prom night.
Okay.
So we know what happens.
Yeah, you know for sure.
Yes, we know for sure what happens. Now, the movie, at this point, us watching it in 2023,
culturally
we know she gets the blood dumped on her.
Right.
But if you went to see this in the theater in 1976, you might not, you would know about the prank, but you might be sitting there thinking, maybe it won't happen.
Maybe Sue stops it. Maybe, whatever.
But both the book and the movie really play with that aspect of dramatic irony that you brought up, where you're watching a tragedy unfold and you know how it's going to end, but there is still that part of you that thinks, oh, maybe it'll work out okay, because you do, in both the book and the movie, you're really rooting for Carrie.
Oh, yes. And that is the other thing that really, to me, works about this, and I had a note about it later, is that Sissy Spacek's performance, pun absolutely intended, carries this movie.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous how good she is. Like, she absolutely deserved an Oscar nomination for this. She's incredible. Especially against some of the other performances in this movie, it is like night and day how good she is. The Margaret's really good. The mom, Sue, I think does a fine job. Miss Collins has her moments and stuff. A lot of the other people, but like Sissy Spacek in this movie is phenomenal.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible, and a big part of that, and that is why it works so well, and that really ties into what I was saying before with the dramatic irony, is that because she is so sympathetic, because the performance is so good, and you want it to work out for her so much, and you want things to go well because you're rooting for her so bad, because of how good the performance is, that it is even more brutal that you know that it is not going to work out.
Yeah.
So that like I said, the performance really even amps that up to just another level. We get to it finally. Carrie wins the prom. They stuff the ballots in the film so that she wins. Her and Tommy go up on stage, and there's this big long sequence, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. But she gets the blood dumped on her ultimately, and I wanted to know. Obviously, I have to know if this comes from the book. This is the moment that literally the only moment that everybody knows. Again, this is the moment I knew, knowing zero else about the film. Does she win prom queen, and does she then subsequently get a bucket of pig's blood dumped on her head?
Yes, she is crowned prom queen. Yes, she does subsequently get a bucket of pig's blood dumped on her head.
Okay. That's what I figured. I mean, I imagined that was the case. That scene, it's really interesting because I mentioned in the prequel that I have seen that scene up until and right after the blood gets dumped on her head. I had watched just that scene because I did a little spoof of it for a video for a work thing. And so I had watched just that scene, completely contextless. And I remember watching it then, I was like, I don't get it. I don't get like the hype here. Like, I don't get why this scene is so memorable or whatever. Like, I get why, like, obviously it's a memorable visual, but like, I don't, but I didn't, again, I want to iterate. I did not watch anything past, she gets blood dumped on her head. That's when the clip I watched end. I did not watch anything after that. And I was like, it's all in slow-mo and it takes forever to get there. But in the context of the film, it works brilliantly. The whole slow motion build up, every single shot's in slow-mo, and we linger on each character and where they're at, and just the reveal of Sue figuring out what's going on slowly over the course of the whole thing. I remembered watching that when I watched the clip and not knowing who she was or what her deal was or how she was involved in this. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I don't know what's going on here with her. I didn't know who Tommy was or why he was. I didn't know anything about what was going on. And so it just didn't work at all. But watching it in context, that build up, that slow-mo build up works entirely. Like, I loved how, because again, it's just, the movie at that point knows, again, the dramatic irony knows how much we don't want this to happen. And it just lingers on it. It just builds it up
really
forever.
holds you in that space.
Yes, it holds you in that moment of just like, oh God, please don't let this happen. And then it does. And I thought it worked great. And again, right after that, just Carrie's reaction and the look on her face throughout the entire climax of this scene. She holds almost the exact same look on her face for like the rest of the film, basically.
Like shell shock.
Yes, it's of like pure, almost like, like that 1,000-yard stare, like PTSD kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I thought it was brilliant.
The other thing that I think is really interesting about that scene and how well it works is that it works equally well if you do or don't know that the bucket is actually going to dump.
No, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. In that moment, that moment works brilliantly. And again, I have more about it later, but from the basically when the prom starts, minus one scene, which we'll talk about later, or like one shot, which we'll talk about later. From the moment the prom starts till the end of the film, I think is 10 out of 10. Just brilliant. It's just all the stuff before that I have some issues with. But so then blood gets dumped on her, and this is where she snaps. And as the thing mentioned, which I thought was an interesting detail, and I actually kind of want to, I didn't put this in the questions, but I kind of want to ask this and see if the book alluded to this at all. A little detail in the film that I thought was interesting is that after this happens, we're seeing the reaction in the crowd, and they're all like stunned and like not thrilled about it. Like they're all like, you can tell they feel bad. Like Miss Collins is upset. Some of the guys, like Tommy's friends who we've met earlier, like one of the girl with the baseball cap, that she's laughing.
Yeah.
But everybody else is like, oh no. And like one of the friends of Tommy is like, I think he's like, one of the other guys starts laughing and he like hits him and is like, dude, what's your problem? Like people are not into this. Like, except for like 2 people think it's funny and everybody else is like, holy shit, this is awful. And I wanted to know it, but Carrie, because she has kind of snapped at this point and has this like psychotic break because all of her worst fears have kind of materialized in this moment, sees the crowd is all laughing at her, and she hears her mom, again, the famous line, they're all going to laugh at you. I wanted to know if that juxtaposition of reality versus the reality of actual reality versus the reality that kind of Carrie has created in her head comes from the book. You know what I mean? Like where she sees everybody laughing at her, where in reality they're not. Do you know if that moment is kind of in the book?
This is an interesting change because I do think that this has implications for maybe kind of how we feel about Carrie. In the book, they are laughing at her.
Oh.
They're laughing. Somebody trips her when she tries to get down off the stage and like run away.
Oh, interesting.
Like, like you said in the movie, she kind of like imagines it.
Yes.
Like she starts,
at least that's what I think you're supposed to get out of it, because you see them reacting, not laughing for a long time, and then after she starts hearing her mom's voice, then we see them laughing. But to me, it's very clear that is her like kind of, I don't know if hallucination is the right word, but that is not actually what is happening.
She's perceiving them as mocking her at the very least, but that is not the case in the book. They are absolutely laughing at her.
Interesting. I will say I don't think it changes how I feel about her at all, because it regardless, in that moment, she's no longer in control. Like
That's
in
fair,
the film
yeah.
too. It's not like she makes a conscious decision to view them as laughing at her. She literally has like a complete break and just like, you know, it kind of I don't think it super changes. I mean, a little bit for sure.
Yeah.
Like I would feel
I do think it's an interesting change.
it definitely makes the film more tragic because you know, like all the people that die as a result in the film are not, you know, as much of assholes as they were in the book, at least. Like the fact that everybody's actually laughing at her in the book. Obviously, you know, the penalty for laughing at somebody is not death, but like, you know, you're a little more like, all right, you asshole. You kind of had that come a little bit. But that gets actually to my next question, which does Carrie murder an entire gymnasium full of people in the book? Because that's what she does in the movie.
Oh, dude, she destroys half the town in the book.
Oh, wow.
She makes it rain fire and blood on this town.
Nice. I mean, well, not nice, but you know,
but also
like nice in the yes, in the like, kind of like the cathartic, like you assholes had it coming. Like obviously not this, but like also
but like,
it's a story. We
know.
can do that. Yeah, we can revel in kind of you getting your comeuppance in a way worse way than you deserve. Like that's fine. Yeah. But yeah, this is the moment where from this, the whole scene at the end here, from the blood dump, and again, honestly, from the whole prom scene on, but I said it earlier, but it's just this movie is absolutely rescued by just having this absolutely iconic climax.
I feel like everyone involved with this production put like all of their energy into this climax, their entire chest into the climax.
And it's like it has all of the most like striking visual moments in the movie are in this. All of the weird editing stuff. I have some notes later that I want to talk about. Like I actually think this is the first Brian De Palma film I've ever watched, and he's very much there's another director. Oh, I think it was Zack Snyder we talked about like this. That is like I can't decide if this dude is a genius or an absolute hack. Like I could go either way, and because in this movie, it literally we get both. We get the prom scene to the end of this movie is all perfect. I don't know if I would change anything about how anything is shot or anything about their end of this to perform everything.
I mean, there's a reason that this is the only part of the movie people remember.
Yeah. But then I look at some of the stuff earlier in the movie. I'm like, how did the same person direct these? Like, it blows my mind. It's crazy. But anyway, so yeah, this is wild. It is truly like a tale of like two different movies almost by. It's cool. It's wild. Okay. So then she kills all the people. She's walking home. Chris tries to hit her with her car, and she ends up killing Chris and Billy, like, flipping the car over, and it explodes. Does that happen in the? Or how does Chris and Billy die?
Similarly, they get out of the gym and they're escaping. They escape in their car and they go to like Billy's. He's got like a room above a bar. He's like a different character in the book than he is in the movie. And then later on, they find out that like half the town is on fire. So they go to leave and they see Carrie like walking in the street and go to like run her over. And then she veers their car like into a brick wall.
Okay. So pretty similar.
Yeah.
Okay. But then so she gets home after that, and I also love, by the way, just a little detail that the fire truck blaring down the street. Obviously, they have important things to get to, but there's a woman covered in blood walking down the street, and they just fly right past her. They don't even check to see if she's okay. Anyways, again, I know they got other things to get to, but I feel like you'd be like, holy shit, maybe we like let one guy off or something to make sure that blood-covered person
like drop one of the paramedics off. We'll come back and get him.
Yeah, maybe they radioed it in or something.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, so anyway, she gets home and she walks inside, and then she takes a bath, and then she bumps into her mom, and her mom kind of has this big confessional speech with her, and she talks about how she basically says like I should have had an abortion. Essentially, is kind of what she alludes to. And she says, as I said in the summary, that her and her husband only had sex twice.
Twice is the
and at least one of those times was not by her. He raped her, and that was when Carrie got pregnant, and
she got pregnant with.
Sorry,
Carrie.
that's when she got pregnant with Carrie, And she alludes to the fact that, or she says that, but even though when that was happening, she like actually kind of enjoyed it, and there's obviously a lot of weird religious trauma and stuff tied up in that. And I wanted to know if that whole angle and conversation came from the book, because that is, there's a lot going on there that is deeply upsetting.
Yes, that does come from the book. And I think this is as good a place to any as to talk a little bit about it. So when we announced this episode on Patreon, Shelby left a comment about this property having a problematic ace passing character, which is certainly something we've encountered in King properties before. Shelby said, she said, I wouldn't say that reading the character of Carrie's mom as a terrible example of an ace-passing character is the only reading for her character, but it is one of them, and it leans into a lot of the stereotypes.
Interesting.
So I'm not going to dig in super deep. I'll let Shelby leave her thoughts and her feedback.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I'm sure they will be better informed than mine. I do have to be honest that I don't think I would have gotten that reading if I hadn't been looking for it. Primarily because the depiction of her mother is so couched in religious and like sex-based religious trauma in both the book and the movie. And I just have much more real life context for that. So I think that probably would have been the only thing that I read.
I did not, because I did not see that comment, I don't think, before watching the movie. And that, but obviously part of this is informed by the fact that just we don't see a lot of ace characters in media and stuff. So it's, it's just not, it's something that we're very slowly getting better at as showing characters like that in media and stuff. And so it's not something that, at least to me, is forefront in my mind when I'm watching a movie. And so, I also did not interpret her character that way, because so much of what she discusses in the film, to me, like you said, the sexual religious trauma stuff, and it's very clear that her mom comes from an upbringing of like deep religiosity, where sexuality was like villainized to the point of like,
and especially female sexuality.
Particularly female sexuality was villainized and sinfulized or whatever, to the point where she had this very overt
to the point where she believes that menstruation is a sign of sinfulness, like literally just menstruating, which just about every woman does.
Almost. It is. She has a deeply problematic views on human sexuality, shall we say. And so that was, again, that my viewing, the lens through I was viewing her character was so wrapped up in that it was not something that
exactly. And Margaret White clearly has like religious sex-based trauma. The question is whether or not she's also asexual.
Right.
And those two things are not necessarily conflated.
No.
Like, obviously all shades of people exist. You can be ace and have separate trauma about sex, or ace and not have that, or have that and not be ace. But I think that like general misunderstanding of asexuality and also unawareness of tropes is so mired all together that any depiction of someone who has any type of trauma surrounding sex is going to like come into those tropes.
Absolutely.
Which makes it at best tricky to depict.
No, for sure. I think that's definitely the case. And like I said, I think the best place to leave this, for us at least, because it's not a perspective we have, a lot of personal experience or anything to say on. So I think it's best to kind of, I'm very interested, I guess I should say, to hear what Shelby has to say about this subject, because it's not the lens through that I was viewing the character through, but I'm very interested to view the character through that lens and see what
for sure
Shelby has to say about it. So then right after that, during this whole conversation, her mom is like, oh, all right, we should pray. Let's pray for the last time. And then she stabs Carrie in the back with a knife to kill her, because she's a witch. And there was a line earlier,
thou shalt not suffer a witch to live.
So she needs to kill Carrie because Carrie's a witch. She has now realized, because she has telekinetic powers or whatever. So she stabs her in the back, but Carrie survives this and falls down the stairs. But I wanted to know, does her mom stab her in an attempt to kill her in the book?
Yes, she does. She stabs her in the shoulder
Mhm.
in the book, and now it is an obvious metaphor, but I liked the movie's change.
In the movie, you mean, yeah.
I liked the movie's change to stabbing her in the back.
Yeah,
you
like
know, it's on the nose,
but sure,
but
fine.
sure, I liked it.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, no, it works. And then my final question for was that in the book is that after she stabs her, she survives, like I said, and then her mom is coming after her with the knife, and we get some very intense kind of back and forth, and her mom stalking her with this knife before she uses her telekinesis to launch a bunch of knives at her mom and like impales her and stabs her into the wall and killing her. And I wanted to know if she kills her in the book, kills her like that, and if it's also a reference. We saw this in the prayer closet earlier in the film. We saw this little statue, which I assume some saint. It kind of looks like Jesus.
It kind of looks like Jesus upon first glance.
But it's full of arrows, so I was like, well, it's clearly not Jesus unless it's some weird version of Jesus I've never seen before.
I did have to Google this. Don't tell any of my former Catholic school teachers. But I think it's probably Saint Sebastian.
Okay.
Because he was like crucified and shot with arrows.
Okay, so yeah, so she dies very reminiscent, and not very, like literally identically to this statue of this saint that they have. And I wanted to know if that happens, and then also when she's dying, is it like orgasmic? Because there's a lot of weird, which this is a very this kind of director thing. This whole movie is effused with like the weird, like it is the most quintessential pretentious filmmaker thing to like the weird combination of sexual, violent, like
it also feels like very distinctly 70s to me.
A little bit, but it has proceeded for long past that, in my opinion. This there are plenty of other modern filmmakers that still do stuff like that.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah. You watch more of this type of stuff than I do.
That commingling. It feels like there's something profound. Or I think I don't have strong feelings one way or the other on it. But those kind of scenes to me feel like the director feels like they're saying something very profound about both violence and sexuality by having characters die in a way that is both. And again, I think it overall works in this movie with the themes that this movie is playing with about the repression of sexuality and religion and all this sort of stuff and martyrdom. And I think there's things there that work about it. But that being said, I also kind of can't help but roll my eyes at like a woman dying by being stabbed with a bunch of knives and like dying in a way that sounds like she's orgasming is like, okay, like I get it, dude. Like I think in the context of this film, it works pretty well. Again, with the broader themes of what this movie is doing, still can't help but roll my eyes a little bit. All that being said, does all that come from the book?
Pretty much none of that is from the book.
Interesting. Okay.
So what happens in the book is that Carrie stops her mother's heart with her mind.
Oh.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
I kind of like both versions of her mother's death. I think they're both really interesting. But she stops her mother's heart with her mind, and then she like crawls out of the house. She's dying.
Yeah.
After all of the effort she expended,
right. Well,
and
she
also got stabbed. Yeah. And then she's later found by Sue, who basically like holds her hand as she dies.
Yeah, like I said, I like the ending of the movie quite a bit, and again, I think it's well crafted, and as I've said, I think the whole ending of this movie works really well, even if I did this particular moment kind of like slightly roll my eyes at. But I think the book's version also sounds like it could be compelling depending on how it was done. If it were done in the film, I think it could be done well. But yeah, no, I think both work.
I really thought for a second when I was listening to the book that she was gonna like shove her hand into her mom's chest and pull her heart out like in Once Upon a Time, because it kind of started and it sounded like that, like when she started talking about her heart, and I was like, wait a minute,
rip her heart out. Yes. Yeah. All right, that's all the questions I had for Was That in the Book. Let's move on. I have one question for Lost in Adaptation.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Where is it lost?
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
So, my one question for Lost in Adaptation, because I just wanted to know if maybe there's anything in the book in this, or if you got this from the movie, or if anybody got this from the movie. I have no idea. Try not to be that guy who always gets this out of a movie. But Am I insane, or is there like something between Carrie and the gym teacher? And I mean that one way, in that it feels to me in the film that the film is implying that Miss Collins, the gym teacher, has like a crush on Carrie. There's like 3 particular moments, and I would have to go back and watch again to find. I didn't write like the specific details of every moment. There was like 2 or 3 specific moments in the film where the camera did something, or Miss Collins had a look or something that felt weird to me in a way that I felt like the movie was implying something more than just like a teacher caring for their student or whatever. So I wanted to know if there was anything in the book, or if you got any of that, or what was going on there.
So definitely not something that I got from the book. It was also not something that I noticed in the movie.
All right, well,
but I think the camera work overall in the movie was like a little weird and voyeuristic.
It's definitely
like,
voyeuristic, intentionally so for some things.
Porny in some places.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. In some.
So it does not surprise me particularly that you noticed that. Like, I'm not shocked by it.
Yeah, it's just, and again, I guess the problem here is that I don't have the specific like moments to reference, but there was one of them was during the thing where she's telling her like how pretty she is, and it wasn't just that. There was a specific moment within that scene.
Yeah,
something about, I can't remember. It was like the way there's some look or something in that scene. Again, the scene overall is like a fine, nice scene. And that I did not get that vibe from, but there was one little moment within that scene, and there was another one earlier. I can't remember what it was. There was one other moment earlier where I had a similar feeling where I'm just like, that's a weird, that look or the way that camera lingered on a thing just felt weird to me. And again, maybe it's just I think what it could be, like you said, I think it could really just boil down to the fact that the camera work is kind of voyeuristic.
Yeah, like overall, it's got kind of an uncomfortable.
It's like, a camera that if ever there was camera work in a film that epitomized the male gaze.
Yeah,
like without even really being like super explicit at any point. Like it's not like we linger on like boobs or butts or, you know what I mean. It's not like we
do a little bit in the beginning.
Even then, we don't linger on them. Like we linger on skin. I would say like it's not like expressly sexual. No, it is.
Like it's not the male gaze the way that like a Michael Bay movie is the male gaze, but it's really just like, okay, you know that thing that people say about how a frog, if you put a frog in boiling water, it jumps out.
That not real thing. Yes.
And if you just like turn up the heat slowly it stays there.
Not true, by the way.
This feels like the slowly turning up the heat version of the male gaze. It's not like a Michael Bay movie.
Right.
But it's just like, it's like suffused with it.
Yes. I think that's the thing, is that it's not meant to. I think voyeuristic is the best way to put it, because it's not like a Michael Bay movie. Like exhibits the male gaze in a way that's like a fireworks show, where it's like, look at these hot women and look how hot they are.
Yeah.
This movie is like, feels like a creep in a corner, like like with binoculars. Like, look again, voyeuristic, I think, is the best way to put it. Where it's not the same thing of like, look how hot they are. It's like it feels skeevy and weird, and I felt the same way, and we actually have a note about this more later. Anyways, I would be interested to see if anybody else got that at all. Probably not. I guess I'll just own being that guy that sees that in more movies than it is there in. But whatever. There was, like I said, it was just a couple specific moments that felt strange, but it's probably just down to the fact that overall the camera is like kind of voyeuristic in a way that that suffuses the whole film
Maybe
with.
the actress that played the teacher was just attracted to Sissy Spacek. She was
Possible.
like 26. when they
that's
filmed
that's
this, like,
every Sissy
she was an
Spacek looks
adult.
the youngest of
Yes.
all of the high schoolers in this
She's
movie.
not wearing like any makeup.
And she's like 25.
Yeah.
Fucking every other teenager or quote unquote high schooler in this movie is like 34
Yes.
years old. Like, this movie is not remotely trying to pretend that these are actual high schoolers. Like, it's like, these are all fucking adults with mortgages. Like, I don't like, yeah. It is pretty funny in that regard. All right. That's it for my questions. It's time to find out now what Katie thought was better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
Okay, so there are a lot of issues, primarily fat phobia and use of animal imagery with the way that Stephen King describes Carrie in the book. Because she's described as like chunky in the book.
Okay.
You know, not really Sissy Spacek.
No, Sissy Spacek is incredibly.
And then there's a
petite.
lot of really problematic stuff going on here.
Yeah.
However, it feels like a very Hollywood thing to me to have the character of Carrie be conventionally attractive. And I mean, Sissy Spacek does look kind of like an alien.
I don't know if I would call Sissy Spacek.
But she's like, she's thin and blonde and blue-eyed.
Sure, yes.
Like, come on.
I would agree with that. And that was actually a concern they had. That was a thing that I remember reading in the prequel, that they were like, they're
like, she pulls off weird.
Yes.
But she's also like thin and blue-eyed and blonde.
I agree, but to me, I will say this. To me, I thought her look worked perfectly for Carrie, where I thought she hit that balance perfectly in the sense that, yes, like, she's thin, blue-eyed, but whatever. Like, she's conventionally attractive in some regards, but in the early part of this movie, she looked like so many of the girls in my schools who were picked on for being weird to me. Like,
it's fair.
Like, when I was growing up, a lot of the girls who were picked on for being weird that I recall from like elementary school and stuff were thin and blue-eyed and blonde. They were, but they were just kind of different or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and kept it. And so many times they were picked on for being just different. Not even that they weren't like quote unquote conventionally attractive. It's just that they weren't like,
I mean,
normal.
look,
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
I know that conventionally attractive people can get picked on. I'm aware of that. It just feels like a very Hollywood thing to have done.
Yeah. No, I look, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I guess my main point is that, to me, this feels weird. I don't want to. To me, she looks like an alien enough that it's like, yeah, no, I like, she's an interesting looking human. She's also, yeah, you see her at times, you're like, wow, she's gorgeous, but like, she's also unique looking enough that it's like, now, I don't know.
The other thing that I will grant the movie is that now Carrie is described in the book as being like heavier. She's like heavily developed. Like, she has like larger breasts.
Yeah.
More on that later.
Okay. Can't wait.
But then also she doesn't get her period until she's like almost 17, which is pretty late. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible to be pretty developed in every other way and still get your period late. Like, it's possible, but it's fairly unlikely.
Right, yeah.
Whereas, in the movie, she's pretty scrawny looking, so I'm like, okay, maybe that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
That does track.
I really didn't like the movie's use of the psycho music sting for Carrie.
De Palma,
I did not care for it.
De Palma is very clearly a big Hitchcock head, because a lot of this movie trades on a lot of Hitchcock moments or techniques. There's a couple things I'll talk about later, but like the split screen stuff was something that in the prom scene, which I think works brilliantly, is something that Hitchcock would do some, and the obviously the music and stuff, and there's quite a few things in this movie that you can tell De Palma is kind of doing a pastiche of Hitchcock, but
I don't get, like why you would want to use something that is so intrinsically linked to another iconic horror property.
I don't disagree. I thought it worked fine because it was so jarring, but it's, I mean, yes, I understand being like, well, that's clearly like, it's like the Psycho string thing.
Yeah.
Like it very vividly connects to that for most people, but I thought it worked. I didn't have an issue with it. I mean, the first time I heard it when she, like, I think the first time we noticed it is, or it might happen earlier, but the first time I really noticed it was when she knocks the kid off the bike or whatever.
Yeah.
And like we really hear it there. But because I remember thinking like, oh, it's a Psycho thing.
Yeah.
But I was like, nah, yeah, it works. I don't know. I thought it worked, but I understand what you're saying for sure.
John Travolta, not really what I had in mind when I was reading the character of Billy Nolan. He's described in the book as he's kind of scary. Like he's like they describe him as a greaser, but he's kind of like this like wrong side of the tracks, like tough guy, high school dropout.
Yeah, that's not
kind of a dude, and he's like very, very dark and kind of scary and like gritty and dirty. And John Travolta was just kind of goofy.
Yeah, he's just kind of goofy. Other than like, there's like one moment where he's a little scary where he hits her or whatever, like slaps her.
Even when he slapped her,
But
he
it
was
is-
kind of
yeah.
goofy.
Well,
I was
that whole
like,
scene, because that whole scene's a nightmare.
I can't take
but
you seriously.
yeah.
Like you're committing domestic abuse, and I can't take you seriously.
Yeah. No, I agree. He definitely doesn't fit with what your description from the book is. Yeah, he's more of just kind of like a dumb, like,
Yeah.
he's not, I don't know if he's a jock or not, but he comes across kind of like a stereotypical, like, dumb jock.
Right. Well, and like dumb to the point of farce.
Yeah.
In the film.
Yeah, for sure. No, again, like I said, I was not a fan of his character or the portrayal or anything. Anytime he was on screen was bad, mostly for me.
And speaking of the scene with him and Chris in the car, somebody explain to me what the fuck happened in this scene, because I felt like I was having a break from reality.
Yeah.
I felt like I was extremely high watching them.
I wrote the same thing at the same time.
Follow, like, words were coming out of their mouths, and I was like, what are they talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, I had the same thought at the same time. They're sitting in the car, like, this is when they're out.
Yeah, when they're, like, out.
But they're just parked sitting in the car, and they're what are they even talking about? I don't even. Yeah, it was.
I don't know.
There is some. Eventually, towards the end, she like asks him to do her a favor or whatever.
Yeah.
But like they're arguing about like how she called him a jerk or called him stupid or it's just they don't talk like humans. I had the same note. I'm like, I feel like Billy and Chris don't speak like human beings. I don't. I felt like I was missing something because it's all just so strange and it is very awkward. And I felt like I was losing my mind as well while that was happening. And then a little detail at the end of that, she starts to go down on him, and it's whatever. This is a little thing, but I just thought it was very funny. She's actively going down on him and talking to him at the same time, having a full-blown conversation while ostensibly we're supposed to believe in this scene going down on him. But she's like, while that's happening, she is like talking to him like normally. And I was like, what is going on?
I don't know, man.
That whole scene was so terrible. And I to the point where it almost felt like it had to be intentional, but it's just, I don't think it was. I truly don't think it was. I think it was just a poorly written and directed scene.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's bad. It's really bad.
It's really bad.
Yeah, some of this is just kind of bad. Like some of the stuff in this movie is just not good.
Something that I missed, then this is something that I often miss with King adaptations, is the kind of layered pastiche effect that he uses in his writing. So Carrie is composed of, there's a traditional narrative, and then it's intersected with excerpts from fictional books and fictional articles and court transcripts from the fictional investigation that followed the book's events.
Okay.
And I get that will not be everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoy the kind of like almost ambient information that the book style provides.
Yeah, no, it sounds interesting. I like stories. Like that sounds like a story structure that I would be into.
Yeah, you probably would. I think
Yeah.
you would probably like this book.
Yeah.
Tommy kisses Carrie at the prom, and I wasn't sure what I was supposed to get out of it.
Yeah, I think he actually likes her. I think that's
Yeah.
what the movie's going for, is that, well, he actually does actually like her, which is,
Okay.
you know, that's fine with it.
And maybe I was like a little confused in this moment because in the book there's the implication occasionally that Carrie can sometimes like get in people's heads and make them like feel a certain way.
Oh.
So I wasn't sure if the movie was implying like nodding to that.
I don't think so.
Or if he just actually liked her, or if he was just caught up in the moment.
I think it's a little bit of those second two things, that he actually
Okay.
kind of likes her, and because he says as much in the movie. He says, "Oh, you got, you know," she's like, "Well, why did you blah blah blah?" And he goes, "Well, you liked my poem or whatever." Because earlier
Yeah.
in the film,
Yeah, she likes his
teacher is
poem.
reading his poem, and she says it's beautiful or whatever, and he, you know. So yeah, I think it is just that he likes her, and then yeah, he kind of gets caught up in the moment and just kisses her.
I didn't hate it overall. I just was like, I don't know what the movie wants me to
I think
about
that's a
this.
moment that are kind of as opposed to some of the other moments where I feel like there was, what was the one earlier where you're the teacher, Miss Collins,
Yeah.
earlier, about how like because I didn't have any context for her
Right.
character or anything that I
I had too much context.
whereas you were more sympathetic to her and I wasn't. I think this is the one that kind of works inverse of that,
Mm-hmm.
where you had the whole thing with like is she influencing his mind or
Yeah.
because that's not a thing at all in the film, like, or at least
Right.
that's not implied to be a thing at all.
No,
in
and
the
that was
movie.
partly why I was so confused because I was like, we haven't seen anything about that
Yeah.
up to this point.
But I think that added context muddled it in your
Yes.
head, whereas to me it was just like, oh, he just likes
yeah,
her. I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's interesting. A very interesting example episode we're having here.
Yeah.
Sue being at the gym, they have to get her at the gym, and I think this is just a gimme that the movie is asking of us, but it doesn't really make any sense because she just like gets up in the middle of dinner
Yeah.
all of a sudden and is like, I'm gonna go.
I'm going out. Bye.
And doesn't like, there's no explanation of why she wants to be there. Like, does she just want to make sure
She's
Carrie's
just-
having a good
I
time?
guess
Or
that's
like,
what it is. She's just checking in to make
Yeah.
sure, Carrie's
because
having a good time.
she does not go to the dance
No.
in the book.
You're saying she doesn't go at all.
Yeah, she doesn't go at all. She's at home and she starts to get this like feeling that something really bad has happened. And then she like looks and she can kind of see where the school is out the window and she can see that it's like on fire and she's like, oh shit.
Oh no.
And gets in her car and starts driving over there because,
Yeah.
you know, that's a good idea. But whatever. I was sad that the gym teacher died in the movie.
Yes, she does get crushed by.
She
a
does get
basketball hoop.
crushed by a basketball hoop. She does. In the book, nobody who didn't kind of deserve it dies by Carrie's hand.
Hmm.
The gym teacher gets out. Tommy does die, but not by her hand.
Yeah.
You know, which is nice.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I was fine with it. I thought it worked. Again, I think this might even tie into your next note here, potentially. What was your last note?
I said by the end, it seems like she's not even the one doing it.
Are you talking about?
Oh, this was specifically
what does this
about like when the house was caving in.
Oh, well, yeah, that I think almost yes. I think that's not
Yeah.
her. I thought you were even as kind of referencing back to like even in the prom where it almost seems like, because I think that's what makes the thing of the gym teacher dying kind of work in the film
Mm-hmm.
is that, again, it's not Carrie, like, I don't want to take agency away from her entirely, but it does feel, it reads in the movie to me at least somewhat that she is not really like consciously doing this. She is somewhat. She is somewhat. No, she, like, especially at the start she is, but it's also she has completely broken like with reality. She like snaps in a way where she's not Carrie anymore. She's like this force of nature that is she's Galadriel at the
at the well.
at the little basin or whatever.
Yeah.
I to me that makes the gym teacher dying kind of work because it's not something that, like, yes, she does it, but it's not like an act of malicious by Carrie in the movie. It doesn't feel like it to me. It feels more like just like she becomes a force of nature as opposed to like an agent making decisions. I don't know. She like becomes a tornado and it's like this all just happens. And like, yes, it is motivated by her agency, but it is not meticulously directed. It's just she snaps, she becomes the Jean Grey Phoenix, and then like then now bad things happen. It's kind of the vibe I got, but I don't know. I don't want to completely take away her agency because I think it's somewhat important, but I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of two different takes on it because I think at the end of the book she does seem to have more agency than she does in the movie.
Yeah, and she definitely does. I think once she leaves the prom, she then comes back and like when she kills Billy and Chris, that is absolutely her doing that. Like that. Yeah, no, and that's where you can tell like that's very. But in the moment in the thing, because we know she's like basically hallucinating, everybody laughing at her when that is not what's happening. It doesn't feel like she's fully in control of what is happening, whereas it sounds like in the book she is. So. All right, that was all we had for better in the book. Let's find out what Katie thought was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
So in that initial scene in the showers in the locker room, in the book, one of the other girls notices first that Carrie's bleeding and like yells like, "Hey, you've got your period" at her, and she just is kind of like looking around dumbly like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah. And I liked that in the movie she sees the blood first and like runs screaming out of the shower.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it's a very intense scene. She like runs over and like grabs another kid. It's like, "What is happening? I'm dying. Help me." Yeah.
I liked the scene with Tommy's poem. That was not from the book. Where he writes a nice poem in his English class.
Yes, which he says later that he did not write.
Did he? I missed that.
Yes, at the end he goes there. The line at prom, he goes, "Oh," she's like, "Why do you like me?" or whatever, and he goes, "Oh, because you said something nice about my poem, even though I didn't write it," or something like that. I don't know what that.
But that's interesting because I did feel like in that scene in the English class, I felt like the teacher was about to accuse him of plagiarism.
Oh yeah,
just like based on the way he was reading it, but then he didn't, so I was like, okay. But I did like that scene.
Yeah,
I
hated one thing about that scene, but we'll get to it in a minute.
Okay. I liked the scene where the gym teacher was trying to like bolster Carrie's confidence. The problematic stuff about like recommending that she wears makeup aside,
she's doing her best.
She's doing her best. Yeah. I thought it was nice of her to try to do that.
Yeah, it's a fine. Yeah, it's nice.
I thought it made a lot of sense to have the bullies just stuff the ballot box. In the book, they kind of leave it up to chance.
Oh, really?
Chris says that she's been doing campaigning amongst her friends to get them to all vote Carrie in, but
they leave it up to chance,
and there ends up being a tie, and they have to have like a second runoff vote.
It was way too much.
And
nonsense.
I know, and I was like, would you have just not pulled the bucket down if they didn't win? I guess like just have them stuff the ballot box. That makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
I liked the montage where Carrie was testing lipsticks and the boys were renting tuxes. I could have done with like the ratios of those flipped and have like more Carrie testing lipsticks and less boys buying tuxes.
Yeah.
But I liked it.
I have to mention, I had this note in odds and ends, but I'll mention it now. That scene where they're buying tuxes, it is one of those moments that is so weird to me, and is one of the moments that made me go, is this movie, like, is this director a hack? Like, what is happening here? Because there's this moment in that scene where they're trying on tuxes, and it all feels like improv, which I thought was fine. Like, I thought the scene worked fine. We're kind of getting some levity and, like, the high schoolers being dumb high schoolers and, like, trying on tuxes and, like, kind of ribbing on each other for the ruffles or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But there's, like, this one brief moment in the middle where the film is sped up. They intentionally speed up in the edit. They speed up, like, they're talking and they're making fun of each other. And then there's, like, one sentence that is sped up and they sound like chipmunks.
Yeah.
and then it cuts back down to normal speed, and then they're arguing again. That to me
It's
was
very odd.
pure hack shit. Like, what is happening? Because it's not a thing that returns. Like, this is the thing where I'm like, this movie does not have at this point and like throughout up until the prom scene, it completely lacks like a clarity of vision and direction that I was expecting, having heard such great things about this movie. Because that kind of thing, like it's not a motif that reoccurs. It's not used ever again, and it's not even like it's used. I don't even think it's effective when used here because it's so brief. Like I get what he's going for. Is like, oh, they're like bickering and like let's speed it up and like and they're fighting and it's kind of funny like that they sound like chipmunks or whatever. But it's like one sentence and it doesn't. And so then I looked this up because I had to go Google this because I was like looking like what do people say about this scene? Because I thought this was the dumbest shit I'd like. What is this doing in this movie? Why would you make that decision? It makes no sense to me. And I started looking up. And all the explanation, because people talk about this on the internet. I saw people on like Reddit and stuff talking about it.
Of course people talk about this
all
on
the
internet.
explanations are stupid as hell. Like everybody defending it is the dumbest fucking defense I've ever heard. There's people being like, oh, well, actually, so like part of it is that like they wanted this to be a moment of levity. And so like, obviously it's kind of funny when they speed over. I'm like, okay, sure. But like, they don't do it enough. Like it should have been more. Like they should have like started. We should have got one sentence of them arguing about Ruffles, and then like 10 seconds of it sped up them fighting, and then like wrestling. Like there should have been like if you're gonna do that gag, like do that gag.
Right.
Like do it.
Commit to the bit.
Commit to the bit and do it. This just felt like a half-assed in the edit room. Like
do that. That would be
that'll
great.
be funny. I don't know. And then it does. It's dumb. And then I saw somebody else being like, well, actually. Also, they wanted for pacing. It was for time because he didn't want the movie to drag out too long, and they wanted to like really get to like it was.
You turned 2 seconds into 1 second.
Yes, exactly. It was literally like they condensed 3 seconds to one. It didn't shave anything. This whole movie is like slow-mo shots and lingering, and it's not even a long movie to begin with. But you literally saved 2 seconds. It's not like you saved 5 minutes. You saved 2 seconds. That's a dumb whatever. And that's all somebody else. And this is like maybe compelling, but again, you would have had to lean into it more for this to even make sense. I saw somebody going, well, actually, I think what it actually is this is one of the brilliant things. It's actually kind of the first, like, not first, but like, this is actually kind of like a feminist. If you view it through a feminist lens, what is actually happening here is the director is showing us that what these boys are saying is dumb and irrelevant by fast forwarding through it.
Oh, I'm not sure that was the director's conscious choice.
And while and all the stuff, and if you notice later, all the stuff with Carrie and everything is all in slow motion because we're lingering on that. That's what matters. Whereas what the boys are doing does not matter. And I was like, this is the most nonsense potential. Again,
you could certainly read it that way.
If that's the point, you gotta commit harder than the movie does. It's one sentence that is. It's not enough. You don't do it. That is so clearly 3 a.m, drunk in the edit bay. I don't know. Like this scene kind of drags, and like what they're saying isn't that funny. Maybe speed it up for a few seconds, and it'll sound like chipmunks. Maybe that'll be funny. Okay, and then it just made the cut because it's hack shit. I will take no. I will fight you to the death on this. That scene is absolute hack shit, and there's not the only one in the movie in my opinion. But it blew my mind that I found people defending that because it's just garbage. It's just bad in my opinion. It's. Anyways.
You're not going to get any disagreement from me.
It just blew my mind. Little details like that it's weird, very interesting, but it does make for an interesting movie to talk about. I'll say that much. Like it definitely. And it leans into something, we'll get into some odds and ends, but like Brian De Palma is actually a very controversial director because of this, because there's a lot of people that I literally Googled, is Brian De Palma a hack? And I got a bunch of people being like, is this man a genius or a hack? And I'm like, yes, thank you. Okay, I'm not alone in wondering if this guy is just like the worst filmmaker or the best, and I don't, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Does that make him just average?
I don't know.
Filmmaker.
I will say it's kind of it's your Zack Snyder or your another one who falls into this is the Moulin Rouge director.
Oh, Baz Luhrmann.
Baz Luhrmann. It's a very similar where it's like, you can't. At least they're doing something. They're trying. They're trying to do something, and when it works really well. And when it doesn't work, you're like, this dude's a fucking hack.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay, where was I?
I'm sorry, I don't.
So Carrie makes herself a baby pink prom dress, and then her mom sees it and is like, I might have known it'd be red. And she says, it's pink, mama.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that the movie, so I might have known it'd be red is from the book. And I like that the movie included that and then just immediately refutes it.
Yeah.
Because she does wear red in the book. She wears a red dress to prom. But obviously they wanted her in something that the blood was really going to show against.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Another question I had that I have to know, and hopefully you might remember, but you probably won't. This would be a digital copy thing. Does her mom say, "I can see your dirty pillows"? Because that is a line it's in the book.
Dirty pillows is absolutely from the book.
Okay, because that is another line from the movie that people I saw when I was Googling today, seeing like what people thought of some certain scenes. That was one of the things I saw was people quoting the dirty pillows line. But
yeah. Nope. Yep. That's from the book.
They're just breasts,
I
Mom.
immediately noted that.
Is her follow up to that in it? She says they're just breasts, Mom. Every woman has them, or something.
I
like
think
that?
so.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I liked that retort.
Yeah. I liked the scene where Tommy's like kind of talking her through a slow dance at prom.
Yep.
I thought that was sweet. I liked that.
That's not the shot, is it? That we'll talk about.
Well, I
later?
mean,
or is it that? But
it's like right before that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm talking about that shot.
I liked that more of the students seemed like they were in on the prank with Chris.
It's like, I think it's only two.
There's at least a handful of them, I think. There's the girl in the hat
and her boyfriend.
And her boyfriend, and then there's the other girl with the ballots.
Oh, there's one other girl. Yeah. So it's like three. Yeah. Because most of the people are not. But yeah, I think you're right. It's
there's like three other people. Yeah. In the book, it was more implied that this was just like a Chris and Billy thing that they were doing.
Yeah.
When she gets back to her mom's house, I liked when she walks in and like there's all the candles. Like every single candle in the house everywhere.
Is lit. Yeah.
It was really like kind of creepy.
Very creepy and sets up. It's a good set piece for your big,
yeah, for
confrontation between mother and daughter.
My last note here, like some other King properties that we have covered on the show, particularly earlier ones, and as we discussed on the prequel, this is his first published novel. There is some racially charged language in this book.
Yeah.
The N slur is used at least once that I recall, among other instances of near slurs.
Yeah.
So
the movie solves that by just having no people of color in it.
True.
I will say there are a couple in the background at prom.
Yeah.
There's a couple black people at prom somewhere in the foreground or background.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Like 3 black kids at their school. Yeah.
Which I don't know where they are. So
they're in Maine. So
I don't know enough about Maine.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know enough about Maine's demographic makeup.
Yeah.
Especially not in the 70s.
No. Yeah. All right, guys. It's time to talk about what the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
Oh, the other girls pelting Carrie with pads and tampons and chanting "plug it up" when she has her period. That's directly from the book. When she gets the blood on the gym teacher's white shorts.
Mm-hmm. And the principal's just like sees it and is like,
The principal continually getting her name wrong.
Yeah.
From the book.
Yeah.
We already talked about a lot of the stuff that I initially had in here. But Carrie making the boy fall off his bike on her way home.
Scary Carrie.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
The scene where her mother is forcing her to recite the sins of women to punish her for getting her period.
Yep.
And her mother locking her in the closet to pray. They do have a prayer closet in the book. The Carrie White eats shit graffiti. Tommy, I thought was like fairly spot on in the book. He's just like a nice guy. Just like a nice guy.
Just a dude being a guy.
Yeah. Her mother does throw tea in Carrie's face when they're having a conversation about prom. Little detail.
Mm-hmm.
Carrie does make her own prom dress. I mentioned dirty pillows earlier. Tommy is killed by a bucket hitting his head.
Yeah, in the movie, again,
What a way to go.
In the Wikipedia summary, it said he faints. He doesn't seem dead in the movie, but he's clearly unconscious.
Yeah.
And maybe dead, we don't know. And then probably dies because the gym burns down.
Fire and everything. In the book, it is very much implied that he is killed when the bucket hits his head. Okay. Maybe it's a heavier bucket. Yeah. I mean, it could kill. There's also, interestingly, in the book, I did not bring this up, but they dump 2 buckets of blood. Oh. There's a bucket for each of them in the book.
One for each of you.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then Carrie White burns in hell outside the house / the property at the end. Her house doesn't cave in at the end of the book.
Yeah.
But it's similarly written
on a for sale sign or whatever. Yeah. All right, that was it. It's time now to get to a few odds and ends before the final verdict.
So this movie opens with, it opens with the shower or
no, it opens in outplaying,
right? Outplaying, and then
volleyball,
it's the
and then into
opening
the shower
credits
for the credits,
that are in
yeah.
that, right? So it opens with the gym class, and all the girls are playing volleyball, and they're like, hit it to Carrie, she won't get it, and then somebody hits the ball over her, and she's like, and can't do anything with it, and then everybody's laughing at her, and I was like, oh, that was exactly how volleyball went for me.
Yeah,
volleyball was the worst. My hand-eye coordination is nothing, and volleyball was nothing but. To this day, I have a massive grudge against the sport of volleyball.
Yeah.
Hanging on to that one.
There you go.
Volleyball can die in a fire.
If Carrie has anything to say about it. As you mentioned, after that opening, we then go into the locker room, and the opening credits on this movie are an extreme slow-mo dolly pan across through the women's locker room, and we see all of these high school girls changing. They're all playing, they're throwing things. It's chaos. It's
the most joyous locker room I've ever seen.
It is the kind of quintessential movie version of a girl's sleepover, or a thing, where pillow fight, they're all just screaming and jumping around, and they're half of them are naked running around, and we see and it's all in slow-mo, and we move slowly down the rows of lockers until we get to the shower where Carrie is showering, and all the rest of the girls are, screaming and laughing and having fun. And I was really unsure of how I felt about this opening, because it's a slow motion dolly of a girl's locker room with nudity, and it's all set to
and full nudity.
Full nudity, and it's set to romantic strings, it's the score is romantic feeling, and I just wasn't sure what it was doing. So if I had to guess what we're going for here, cinematically, thematically, what have you, is that we're juxtaposing the joy and the mirth of all of these other girls, again, because they're all they're having fun, they're playing around, they're frolicking, blah blah blah.
Far more joy than I ever witnessed in a gym class
nobody
locker
ever
room.
It's great. It's nonsense. But I'm trying to imagine what we're doing here, and we're setting all of that up to juxtapose that to Carrie's suffering, and what is about to
loneliness.
happen. Her loneliness, yes, loneliness in the locker room, and then the subsequent traumatic experience that she's about to go through. And so I imagine that's what we're going for, but it still felt really weird to me. But then when we push into the locker or into the shower, we linger on Carrie showering in a way that is voyeuristic. Yes. Yeah. We linger on these close-ups of her face, similar to when her mom dies at the end, that is orgasm. I don't know how to describe it other than sensual and orgasmic. She's washing herself, but she's the way she's touching herself, and the expression on her face and all this stuff is, it's weird. It's not weird. It is implying
suggestive of sex.
It's suggestive of sex. And again, obviously thematically what we're going over, this whole thing is about like a coming of age and dealing with sexual maturity and the religious trauma that her upbringing has to do with that, and the interaction between boys and girls in high school, and all, like, we're doing with all these different things. And so I understand, at least to some extent, kind of I don't need to go to bat for this scene at all. But like, I understand, like, if I pull back, I can kind of understand why these choices were made, but that doesn't mean that I think they're the right choices necessarily. And the whole thing just felt weird to me in a way that I don't think ultimately served the themes of the film.
Themes or the narrative.
Yeah.
I thought this whole opening sequence was just really odd and really uncomfortable. Maybe that's the point.
I think that is partially the point.
But it felt too close to porn for comfort for me.
Yeah. And again, it's tough because I think there's something there. I think that there's something thematically there with what the movie is attempting to do with juxtaposing the comfort and ease that these other women have in their bodies versus Carrie. But then it becomes weird when her showering feels... I feel like...
Well, I think it becomes weird because then we cut to her in the shower and it also feels like she's comfortable with her body and like sensual.
Yes,
and
that's I think the part that feels
like
very
if
strange.
she had been like if we had gotten all of that extremely heightened, like, oh, I'm so comfortable with my body and my sensuality and I'm among my friends and we're all laughing and we're having a grand time in the locker room after gym class, and then we had panned over to Carrie
and she's hunched in the corner.
Yeah, she's like hunched in the corner under the water and like standing super still and like trying to cover herself. Yeah. That would have made sense.
Yeah.
But the cut to Carrie makes it not work for me.
I think I think that is the nail. I think that nails kind of where it falls short for me and where it becomes like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
I agree entirely.
And it really set the tone for me in a way that I did not care for.
No, absolutely. Like I said, I agree completely. I think it for sure, to me, it felt like I was like, this set me off on the wrong foot, and it slowly recovered, and it was media, whatever. Yeah, that opening just, like I said, I think I can see some of what they were going for, but it just, I don't think it works entirely, and it definitely has not aged great. It feels even worse, I think, now than it would to an audience in the 70s. But I don't know. Yeah, it's I don't know. Speaking of another thing that I thought direction-wise that I was not a huge fan of is there's the scene where she's then coming home after all this happens. She's walking home, and that little kid is weaving in and out of the trees on his bike. This is the kid she knocks off the bike.
Yeah.
At first, we're watching from her side. She's on the sidewalk. She's walking towards the camera. The kid is weaving in and out of the trees. And then he's like going away from the camera. Then he wraps around and he starts coming towards the camera, and he's weaving in and out of the trees like a slalom or whatever. But then every time he cuts off camera, because the trees are on like camera right, and we can't see the other side of the trees. And every time he goes off camera to the right, we cut to a shot over there where we see him weave out by himself. And then when he cuts back, we then see him on her side with him. And now, I thought this scene, to me, felt like a director trying too hard. Like, why is that shot there? I will say, I think I know what was being gone for now that I think about it a little more. I think what we're trying to do there is to remove... The trees are separating him and Carrie, and is kind of a visual distinction of him from her, a visual separation of him from her and her as an outcast or whatever. I think that shot's way more effective if the trees are center, like if the trees are center frame, and we see him weaving in and out, and we don't cut between two different shots. The two different shots, it's a little thing, but as a director, it felt. Sorry, I fucking direct. I do direct things.
You do. I'm not denying that.
I know. I saw the look, and I heard it. I heard what I said. But as somebody who directs things, is literally my day job. It was something to me that felt clumsy. It felt like, again, a director trying too hard in a way that didn't quite work when I could kind of understand what they were going for, but that it just is not maybe the most effective way to do that. And I didn't like it. And it was one of the things that made me think Brian De Palma is a bit of a hack.
Can I get you a t-shirt that says Brian De Palma is a try-hard hack?
Yes. And then on the back it'll say, but the last 35 minutes of Carrie are some of the best cinema ever created. Or something like that. Yes, I will wear a shirt that I absolutely. Again, having only seen one of his films, I want to stress that enough. Brian De Palma, if you ever listen to this episode, which obviously you won't, but yeah.
I want to make the burn book in Mean Girls. I want to make a TFIL burn book. We can put a picture of Brian De Palma in it and write Brian De Palma is a try-hard hack.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm down. Look, I'm sorry, Brian De Palma, but also just, be a better director.
Just don't be such a try-hard hack.
Such a try-hard hack. But also keep doing what you're doing, because, again, half the shit you do is, brilliant, that at least in this movie, and the other half fucking sucks. So I don't know. Figure your shit out, man.
So in the scene where the gym teacher's running detention with the girls who were in the locker room, and one of them, I think Chris, says, I don't even remember what she says, but she says the word ass, and I think the movie bleeps it out.
Oh, I missed that.
I think it did.
I missed that entirely.
It sounded like it did. Her voice cuts out when she says ass. And I was like, there's full bush in this movie. Why are we censoring the word
watch people
ass?
Die.
I don't
get covered in blood. That
was very strange to me, and maybe I misunderstood what was happening in that scene. But
I did not notice that, but
out so badly.
Very
to
possible
me.
I just missed it.
I was like, "What's happening?"
Also, I will say, I also thought that whole sequence sucked, where they're doing I thought it went too long. Sorry,
it did go too long.
Where they're doing the workout, and it's we get panning shot after panning shot after panning, or dolly shot, not panning shot.
Goes on
dolly shot after dolly shot after
ever.
dolly shot down the row of them doing different workouts. And again, I know what we're doing. We're exemplifying the fact that this is going on and on and on, and it's this thing, but I was like, okay, it didn't work for me. It got repetitive and tedious, that particular scene. Also, another thing that I fucking hate is, I mentioned this earlier, and this is maybe most apparent in the scene where he's reading Tommy's poem. Did you notice this? There's this thing that happens in this movie a lot, because apparently Brian De Palma fucking loves a split diopter shot, which I don't know if you know what that is.
No, I don't.
Okay. So normally with a camera, when you focus it, you can focus on one thing at one certain distance away. So you focus a camera, if depending on your depth of field and other things, whatever you're focusing on, usually. So if your subject, the person you're filming, is 10 feet away from the camera, and you're focusing on them 10 feet away from the camera, things that are 50 feet away from the camera will be out of focus. They'll be blurry.
Right. Yes.
Things that are 1 foot away from the camera will be out of focus. They'll be blurry. And only things that are 10 feet away from the camera will be in focus. Split diopters allow you to have two focus points, basically.
Okay.
And it's literally a thing that goes on the front of the camera. It's like a lens. I've never used one, but it's like a lens attachment adapter thing that goes on the front of the camera. That's literally a half of a little glass ring, basically, that allows you to focus at two different points. And tons of movies have used these in different ways over time. Hitchcock's used it some. There's a very famous one in Jaws. It's in tons of stuff. It's a lot more older. It's not used as much modern cinema, because I think people realize it fucking sucks. My hot take is that split diopter shots are fucking trash unless they're really good. Unless they're brilliant, they're fucking awful. And this movie uses them constantly. The one that is most noticeable is the one in the classroom where Tommy is sitting in the foreground at his desk, and then Carrie is at her desk at the back of the room, and they're both in focus.
Yeah.
That would not traditionally be doable with
either
Tommy or Carrie would be in focus in a particular shot. unless you changed the framing or did some other stuff. But with a split diopter, you can get them both in focus. And this movie does it a ton, and I fucking hate split diopter shots. I think they look shitty. Again, unless they are done brilliantly. The one in Jaws is pretty good. There's one in some Robert Redford movie that I've seen. I can't remember which one it is pretty good. There's a handful of them at different times. I'm like, that works okay there. The Coen brothers used to use them pretty often in some of their early stuff. I don't know if they still do or not, and occasionally it would work in a Coen brothers movie. But it's also, I think you should use it like once in a movie. I think it should be one time. It's one of those things you get to do it like once. It's like it's like the vertigo zoom, which also is in Jaws. The thing where you push in while zooming out and you get the weird effect where like you push in on a person's face and like the background and it creates that like vertigo. It's called the vertigo because they did it in Vertigo. But things like that, can't overuse them. And De Palma uses it fucking constantly in this movie, and I fucking hate it.
What a fucking try hard hat.
That's what I'm saying, man. I fucking hate it. Look, I am just not a fan of split diopter shots. If you're a person that likes them, cool, but I don't know who likes them other than Brian De Palma and early Coen brothers. Again, you can use them like once. If you have a particular scene in a particular moment, you can do it. But you also have to hide it. It's also, you got to do it in a way where you can hide because you can see the split.
Yeah.
Like, you normally, the best way to do it is to hide it on like an edge of like a wall or a door frame or something where it like kind of hides the effect. In this movie, it's constantly just right down the middle of the frame. Anyways, this is big director nerd episode. People get to find out all the things that I hate the directors do.
I like listening to you explain film things.
So you mentioned it earlier, but the scene where Carrie's mom throws tea on her before prom, that whole scene I thought was beautiful and brilliantly shot. And again, it's another one of those things where it's like
really like the lighting was lovely.
The lighting is great.
Scene.
It's candle lit, and then we have most of it plays out from a wide where we can see both of them at the table with a mural of the Last Supper.
Giant mural of the Last
between
Supper.
them. It's gorgeous. It's amazing. I also love the moment where she throws the tea on her and then the candles go out. It's extinguishing her hope in that. It's all brilliant. Like, again, I never watched a movie where the director fluctuates so fucking far between absolute brilliance and absolute hack shit. It's wild. It is maybe most reminiscent of like a Zack Snyder thing.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to me.
We have to talk
But
about,
I will say this real quick. I gotta say, I want to clarify. I don't think anything Zack Snyder has ever done is as good as anything in Carrie. I do want to clarify that. But it's a similar type of dynamic where he does some really good stuff at times. And then, but yeah, I think the best stuff in Carrie is way better than anything Zack Snyder has ever done. Just to clarify that for people out there. Anyway, sorry.
I kind of want to put that on a t-shirt for you too.
What?
I think the best stuff in Carrie is better than anything Zack Snyder's ever done.
It's a little more wordy.
It's a little more wordy, I guess, yeah. Okay, anyway, we have to talk about the girl with the baseball cap. There's a girl wearing a baseball cap every time we see her in this movie, which was not very noticeable at the beginning when they're like at school and in gym class. And then they show her briefly. There's a scene of her and the other girl with the glasses like at the hair salon getting their hair done before prom. And she's under one of those big like seated hair dryers where they put a big thing over your head. And she fucking has her baseball cap sitting on top of it.
Yeah, they really leaned into that.
It's like a cartoon.
Does the hat thing at all in the book?
No.
Okay, I figured not. I was just making sure. Yeah,
and then she's wearing it at prom, like with her prom dress. She's a baseball cap with like a rainbow button on it.
I also think it's like it's like a My Little Pony hat, because it's got rainbows all over.
Yeah,
it.
it's got maybe it could be Rainbow Bright.
Oh, Rainbow Bright,
maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Well,
yeah.
Rainbow Bright was more 80s. I don't know. But
My Little Pony, I think was 80s too. I don't know.
Maybe she was gay.
That's what I was like really wondering. I was like, what is, because it has a rainbow. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't
probably
know.
Just a random hat.
I honestly don't know off the top of my head when the rainbow became like prevalently
probably not
used for, probably around this time,
close
but
to it.
I don't know for sure And I don't know that would have been like a recognizable symbol to general audiences at that time, even if it was being used by the queer community, gay community. But
designed by artist Gilbert Baker at the request of San Francisco City Supervisor and first openly gay elected official in the history of California, Harvey Milk, the original rainbow flag made its debut at San Francisco Gay Freedom Day Parade celebration on June 25th, 1978. So after this.
After.
Because it's 76, right? This movie? Yeah.
Okay, so maybe she's not a gay icon.
An evil gay
icon.
Yeah.
Listen, gay people are allowed to be villains.
Yeah, no, I know. Some of the best villains are gay. I mean,
yeah. Thanks, Hays Code. So the scene where they're decorating the gym, which you brought up earlier, I just want to mention that in this scene, Sue is at the top of a terrifyingly tall ladder. I was worried watching her in this scene because she's at the top. You know how high a school gymnasium ceiling is?
Yeah.
She's like all the way up at the ceiling on this ladder in wedges and bell bottoms. That is not safe. It's not OSHA approved.
She's fine. She seems fine. It's the 70s. Nobody cared. Climbed ladders and died half the time. That's how it worked back then. That's why
you just climbed ladders and died.
Yeah. But this brings us to the scene at prom that we've mentioned several times at this point. The one scene, so as I said, from when prom starts till the end of the movie, brilliant. Chef's kiss, 10 out of 10, except for one shot.
Except for this one
shot, which is intentional, but also I hate it, and I don't care if it's intentional.
I could not imagine watching this on the big screen.
Oh my God.
I would have to close my eyes. I would have had to,
yes,
because we watched it, so they're dancing.
Yes.
They're slow dancing, and then they spin, and the camera spins.
The opposite direction. So they're spinning, and they're clearly on a lazy Susan of some sort. Because they're spinning way faster than physically feasible for them.
Yeah, they're spinning, and the camera's spinning the opposite direction. And we sit on this for like a full 5 minutes.
Oh my God, it's forever.
I thought I was going to hurl.
I legitimately felt the most nauseous I've ever felt watching a movie.
I was sitting there I felt like I was gonna throw up watching it.
I felt physically and I'm not exaggerating at all. Not even the slightest bit. I felt really unwell for like 10 minutes after that scene happened. I was like, oh my God. And now I will say I still was able to enjoy the movie. It wasn't so bad that I wasn't able to enjoy what was happening. But oh my God, it was like I was literally physically nauseated by that in a way that was like really obnoxious. And again, I'm sure that was at least partially intentional.
Yeah.
Because and we're definitely with the spinning and her like being lost in the moment and the spinning and the like. I know what we're going for there, and again, I think it kind of works. But it was too much to the point. Like I said, if you're to the point where I'm physically feeling unwell, dial it back like a touch. Like you can still get the same effect without making me feel like I'm gonna puke. Like if this was a Saw movie and like a character was like in a trap where they were physically like going to throw up, I could imagine a movie trying to make you also feel physically ill. That is not what's going on here. There is something, it's trying to make you physically uncomfortable, but it just goes a little too far in my opinion into like I feel really unwell. This is not good. I don't like it. Please stop. But right after that, we get the big, long one-take shot through prom, which is just brilliant. The camera moves through the entire prom. We watch all this stuff happen. It goes, and we see Billy and Chris under the stage. Then it moves around to behind the stage, and we see Sue come in behind the stage. Then it goes up the rope that is like on the backdrop of the stage, and then over to the bucket up there, and then it swings around, and we even move up even further and tilt down and focus on Carrie and Tommy out in the crowd. It's just a fucking brilliant oneer through this whole prom. Like just a genuinely fantastic shot that I was like, yeah, no, I get it. Like, again, I don't know how all of this stuff is all in the same movie. Like, I don't, it's crazy to me.
I just had a note here about how the movie like kind of like really drags out that climax,
which again I think works really well.
I think it works.
Yeah. But so after all the prom stuff happens, my last couple note here is that she goes home, and when she gets home, I actually saw somebody criticizing this online. I can disagree entirely. The shot where she walks up in front of her house, it's like a low angle shot looking up at her house. Her house in the doorway is center frame, and the stairs going up to her house, and she like walks in covered in blood, and then she walks up the stairs slowly, and we just linger on it the whole time. Is so fucking good. Also, I didn't mention earlier, but specifically, there's so many good shots in the prom scene, but specifically, and it's one of the most famous shots from the movie, the silhouette of her with all the flames behind her covered in blood on it's just fucking stunning. Just so good. But then she goes up, so the big long shot out front where she walks into the house, I thought was just great and brilliant, kind of building the anticipation of the confrontation with her mother. But then when she gets into the house, she walks up into, because she lives in like the attic or whatever. She goes up to her bedroom to go take a bath. And that we linger on that shot as she goes up the stairs, and the light is like blasting up behind her up the stairs. And again, she's almost silhouetted in front of the stairs. And there's like this dummy, or it's the thing she had her dress on is like in the corner, and the door to her bedroom is open. And it's just like, we're focused on Carrie, and she eventually walks into her room. And after she does that, the camera like slowly pushes in, and we notice that her mom is standing behind the fucking door, like lurking in the shadows. And it's so fucking creepy. It's so good. Oh, the whole end of this movie is just incredible.
I will say though, by the time she gets home and is taking a bath, that the blood is way too bright red.
It would be a lot darker.
It would be much darker by that point.
Yeah,
it's like bright red.
Yeah,
when she's bathing.
And then everything wraps up. Carrie, all that stuff. But we get this last scene with Sue. Is that her mom gets a call on the phone, and she's like kind of explaining what happened to whoever she's talking to, and she goes, "Well, the good news is that the doctors say that Sue's young enough that she'll forget all about everything that happened, and she'll be fine or whatever." And so, because we both in this moment were like, excuse me, she is a senior in high school.
She's not 3 years old.
Yeah, she is not going to forget this. What are you talking about? And I think what we're doing here is this is the mom's sort of a delusion on the, like she's she's trying to tell herself this, that, oh, it'll be fine. Things will be fine. And so she's telling other people that. And I think that's what we're going for, which I think works. And I think is a kind of a dark kind of ending to the film. Assuming that is what they're going for, because otherwise that makes literally no sense. But I did also really like the way that the movie ends with, it's a good jump scare. You jumped, I saw you.
I knew about that jump scare, and I still jumped. Yeah,
when Carrie's hand comes out of the rubble and grabs her in her dream or whatever, but then she wakes up and she's like screaming, and her mom comes in and is like trying to like comfort her or whatever, and the way she's holding her, and then with the conversation previously, to me at least, I read that as like, this is kind of like a cyclical start of another problematic relationship between mother and daughter that is going to end poorly potentially, which I thought was interesting. If that's what they were going for, maybe not. I don't know. All right. As always, you can do us a giant favor by heading over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads. Let us know what you thought of the movie, and we'll talk about that on the next prequel episode. Again, that'll be in a couple weeks' time because we're going to take a little hiatus while we go on our honeymoon. If you want to do us a favor, though, you can head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere else where you listen to our show. Drop us a little 5-star rating and write us a review. All of that stuff helps. Really appreciate it. And finally, if you really want to help us, head over to patreon.com/thisfilmislit, and you can support us there for a few bucks a month. If you give us $5 a month or more, you get access to bonus content we just released yesterday, our review of Black Swan. We just talk about whatever. So if you want to hear us talk about another great mother-daughter trauma,
mother-daughter trauma fest.
Yeah. So go check out our discussion on Black Swan. I thought that was a pretty good episode. That is out now. And that's all that. Katie, it's time for the final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
Upon going into Carrie, I had little more than surface-level knowledge of the property gained through cultural osmosis. And I'll be honest, there were moments in both the book and the movie when I wanted so badly to file this story under good for her. At its core, this is a tragedy about a teenager who is failed by every single person around her. And the part of me that's still a hurt teenager who wanted to burn it all down cheered for Carrie when she got to burn it all down. But it's not a victory for Carrie. As I said, this is a tragedy, and it's a tragedy with no notes of triumph. Neither the book nor the movie are without their faults. The movie is uncomfortably voyeuristic and sexual at times. I found a lot of the creative choices odd, to say it as nicely as I can. Some character motivations that needed to be explored more fully simply aren't, like Sue and Tommy, resulting in something that feels off at times. I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. I'm not sure that this movie would have become a beloved horror classic without Sissy Spacek's performance. The book provides a much fuller picture of the characters and narrative, but is bogged down by the looming presence of its adult male author.
Let's cancel Stephen King. I'm kidding.
Well, no, while I think Stephen King might have done the best he conceivably could.
That's usually the case for Stephen King. He's doing his best.
He's doing his best.
As an old white guy.
His language choices in regard to Carrie's body, and in particular her breasts, are uncomfortable at best, and not in a thematic or thought-provoking way.
The movie captured that, at least in some regard, yeah.
I know that nobody likes remakes, especially of beloved classics, and I know nobody liked the 2013 remake, but I think that this book deserves an adaptation that looks at it through more of a feminist lens. Like, I would love to see an adaptation that gets like a Jennifer's Body type treatment that really embraces the fact that this is about a teenage girl and all of the horror that comes along with that.
I truly don't want to jump in here too much, but I think that Jennifer's Body just is that movie.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of just is.
It kind of just is.
Yeah.
But I would love to see somebody like Diablo Cody get a crack at this property.
Yeah.
I thought that the movie was fine. I also thought the book was fine. And despite the book's faults, I think that its layered, more expansive nature gave the story and the characters the breathing room that they needed. And for that reason, I'm giving this one to the book.
Interesting. All right. Well, I'm sure that may be a little controversial.
Might be a little controversial, but we've established that Brian De Palma is a try-hard hack.
Yes.
So
that's also going to be controversial. Come at me, Brian De Palma. I have 3 words for you, though, which I think might be, I could understand. I don't know if she's ever done a movie like this, but Greta Gerwig's Carrie.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I would adore that.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, Lady Bird is like half the way there.
Lady Bird is half the way there. Like Greta Gerwig or like Diablo Cody I mentioned earlier.
And I'm sure there's a ton of other filmmakers.
Yes.
Those are just like first to mind because
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot there to be.
And like, to be fair, I have not seen the 2013 remake.
I also don't know who wrote or directed
2013 might lean into that more. I looked it up earlier as a genderqueer person directed the 2013 remake.
Yeah,
I read the synopsis and it sounded a little like mired in its time.
Yeah.
As a lot of movies of that era were.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, no, it could be. Yeah, I might have to check that one out at some point.
I would just love to see something that really leans into the like Mean Girls aspect. Like, Mean Girls, Jennifer's Body, really digging into the like teenage girl puberty horror aspect of this story.
It's interesting because it's directed by that 2013 one, again, not to get too far off in the weeds on this, but it's directed by Kimberly Pierce, who did Boys Don't Cry, which is the movie about a trans man from like 1999 or something like that. Also directed an episode of The L Word and a handful of other things that I think seems like they would potentially have an interesting perspective to bring to it. So I actually wonder, I'd be actually really interested to watch the 2013 version just to see how, like if it is bad or if it is how it worked.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was, panned because of, shitheads. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know nothing about it.
HBO Max recommended it to us immediately upon
Yeah,
finishing. We finished Carrie, and HBO Max was like, more
Do
Carrie.
you want to watch the 2013 one right now, immediately after watching the original? Nah, I'm good. Thanks. All right, Katie, what's next?
Well, following our 2-week hiatus, where we will be on our honeymoon, we will be returning at the beginning of November to talk about Bridge to Terabithia.
Can we not have miserable things happen for a movie?
No.
Okay. Going straight from Carrie to Bridge to Terabithia. Sick. Let's be miserable. All right.
Did you read that?
No, I know nothing about it other than I know the ending is miserable.
The ending is miserable.
Yes, that's all I know about.
That's-
I don't even know what the ending is. I just know that it's like famously like miserable.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah. All right, that's gonna do it for this episode. Until we see you again, it'll be a couple weeks. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everybody else.
Keep reading books
Watching movies.
and keep being awesome.